Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 19th and tonight's movie is The Invitation. This is a horror slash thriller movie from 2015 directed by Karen Kusama, the same person who directed Jennifer's Body. And I don't really have anything else about this movie. I watched the trailer and it's one of those trailers that goes on for a while but says almost nothing. The only things I was able to glean from this trailer is that this man gets invited to a dinner party at like his ex-girlfriend or wife's house, and she's already paired up with someone new, but he goes there and he's suspicious of something. And I already knew all that just by reading the little plot synopsis that comes with this movie. Usually my intros are longer than this, but I have nothing else I can say, so I'm just gonna go watch the movie. That was interesting. I'm gonna give The Invitation a 7 out of 10. It's one of those movies where the first two acts are kind of slow and uninteresting, but then the last act is amazing. The main character is a man named Will, and they're going to a dinner party being held by his ex-wife named Eden. Both of them have found someone new since then. Eden married a man named David, and Will is dating a woman named Kira. There's also another small group of friends at the party, like 4 or 5 people. I really liked Kira's character. I liked the way that she was written, and I liked the way that the character was acted. The actress was named, I hope I'm saying this right, Amayatsi Corinaldi. She did a great job. In fact, everybody did a great job when it comes to acting. Across the board, the acting in this movie is very good. From the beginning, the atmosphere of the party is very uncomfortable. None of these people had heard from Eden in, I think, 2 years. And in those 2 years, the friend group hasn't really been together. It's implied that something very traumatic happened that led to Will and Eden getting divorced, but they don't tell us what happened for a while. It's a lot like the Black Coat's daughter in the fact that you learn information as you go. However, the atmosphere goes from uncomfortable to suspicious with a few things that Eden and David do. They invite these two people that none of the other people know. This middle-aged man named Pruitt and this young woman named Sadie. And overall, they just act kind of suspicious. There's a point where Eden goes into her room and makes sure that a giant bottle of pills is still there, and David decides to lock the door and explains it away by saying that there was a home invasion in the neighborhood and they were just being paranoid. There are also bars in the windows now. I've seen this in a few movies, like the thing where what's going on is suspicious, but not really suspicious enough to warrant really doing anything about it. One of the guests never even showed up at all. They establish that he's constantly late to things, but eventually gets to the point where it's suspicious. Eden acts weird, David acts weird, Sadie and Pruitt act weird. But nothing really happens that is too concerning for a while. This movie is very, very slow in its first half. And the scenes are pretty long too. Some of them are probably about 10 minutes. I understand that the movie wants to be a slow burn, but I think it was a little bit too slow. They add little moments of action and suspense here and there, but a lot of it is just build up. But I don't know if it was quite as necessary as I thought it was. With a lot of these movies, if there isn't something suspicious actually going on, we don't have a movie. So it kind of just feels like the movie's spinning its wheels. But once the buildup is over, this movie springs into action, and wow, it is intense. I would argue that the movie is worth watching just for the third act. I can't tell you very much about what happens because figuring out what's going on is basically the plot of the movie, but it was very interesting, very intense, very well paced at the end. This is a movie that spends 2/3 of it at 0, and then it instantly goes to 100. If you're patient with it, I think this movie is pretty rewarding. But to talk about why, I gotta go into some spoilers. It seems that the catalyst for Will and Eden's divorce was the death of their son. Both of them took it extremely hard naturally, but Eden tried to kill herself. But Eden went off to somewhere in Mexico to go meet a group or get help or something, and that's where she met David. And when they come back, they start talking about their experience, and it starts to feel a lot like they're trying to introduce their friends to a cult. But they don't have very good tactics. They show them a video of the cult leader sitting by a woman who is dying and watching her die and have her just like fade away in front of the camera. Then Pruitt, in a game where they're talking about confessions, he talked about how he accidentally killed his wife a while ago and had to go to jail for manslaughter, but how the group helped him let go of his feelings of grief. It gets uncomfortable to the point where one of the guests actually, leaves. They try to stop her, but she's insistent, and Will also is insistent. If she wants to leave, let her leave. It's implied that something might have happened to her on the way out, but we're never given confirmation one way or another. Then there's a red herring moment where the one guest that's been missing the entire time, a guy named Choi, he shows up even though Will got a voicemail from him. There's no cell reception in their house, another red flag. The voicemail made it seem like he showed up early and then just disappeared, but apparently he had to just leave and didn't tell them about that in a voicemail, and then he just came back. So suddenly Will looks like he overreacted and freaked out over nothing. But then he finds a laptop that has a video of the cult leader talking about how this is a big step and you can do it and this is how we prove ourselves to be worthy of letting go of the pain and a bunch of other apocalyptic cult stuff. And right after that, Eden and David propose a toast. One of the guests, a woman named Gina, is able to take a little sip, but pretty much right after that, Will just stops everyone and it's breaking glasses, no, don't drink anything. Then there's an altercation with Sadie and she falls over and hits her head, and while they're trying to get her back up, someone says she's not breathing and they say no, Sadie's breathing, and then they say no, not Sadie, Gina. And Gina, the only one who drank some of the stuff that they gave them, is on the table with foam coming out of her mouth. And that's when this movie starts firing on all cylinders. The four people behind this, the couple and their two guests, start just trying to kill everybody. They got guns, they got knives, they're just going all out. And it's a really long process, but three guests, Will, Kira, and one of the other friends, make it out of it. Everybody else has been killed. And here's a really clever touch. Right before the attempted poisoning, you see David go out into the yard and light a red lantern. And there's a point at the tail end of the movie where two of the three survivors, the friend went back inside the house to get something. Kira and Will go up to the lantern and they look at it, and then they hear helicopters, sirens, dogs barking, gunshots, screaming. And then they look up. This place is in the hills, so there's so many lights and houses visible from the yard, and they see a bunch of red lanterns. This wasn't just them trying to kill a bunch of people. This was the entire cult trying to kill a bunch of people. That was a really nice touch. And then the movie ends. Again, this is one of those movies that is not very good for 2/3 of it, but then the last third is so good. You kind of have to be patient for it, but I believe it was worth it. And that's about all I have to say about The Invitation. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next video.